Easy now.
Easy now.
Hey, mate. Welcome back to the Drive Talk podcast, but this is a pretty special Drive Talk podcast because it's not just me, you and Pat.
It's not. We're here at the wonderful Caffeine Machine with a live audience. So firstly, massive thanks to Michelin for sponsoring this podcast. Huge thanks to Caffeine Machine for hosting us on this gorgeous May evening. It feels like the summer's finally arrived. And a big thanks to everyone for turning up. We know it's been very short notice, and hopefully it's going to go well and you enjoy it.
Yeah, no, thanks for everyone for turning up. So hopefully you kind of listened to the first 3 episodes of Drive Talk podcast. I can't believe that we've only put 3 out, to be honest. I don't know where the time's gone.
No. Well, there's our 4th one's coming this Friday, and we've got a special guest on that. So,
yes.
And then this will be the 5th that will come out in about 2.5 weeks' time.
I know. It's really complicated trying to keep track of what we've recorded and so on. But so as I said, the plan for this one, we've got a few subjects that we're going to just update you on a couple of things we've been up to recently. And then one of the things we thought we wanted to talk about tonight is we've each got quite interesting following. So Joe, you work with is it BMW maybe you do lots of stuff with?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so he's a bit of a BMW fan. So I wanted to find out why Joe loves BMW so much.
And I wanted to find out why you love Minis so much.
Indeed. And as there are plenty of Mini and BMW owners in the audience, we thought that that's something you might be interested in, basically. But before we do that, there's some catching up to do because we've both been up to things recently. Where do we want to start, mate?
I think we should start with you. What's that thing on your wrist you got there?
Oh, well, this
yeah.
What my Iron Man thing that I haven't taken off.
Yes.
And I did it 2 weeks ago. It's getting a bit mingy now, but...
Oh, well, I mean, I'm sure most of you agree. I think it's massively impressive for someone of Pete's age to do... No, for anyone to do an Ironman, I could say that, but I could
a half Ironman,
a half Ironman. Yeah. But still, I mean, I couldn't do a 10th of an Ironman, so it's really impressive. But I'd love to hear some of your stories from that event. I know it's not a car-related thing, but it's definitely something that we've been talking about for the last couple of months. And
yeah, I mean, so it was 2 and a bit weeks ago, Marbella. We got there, we checked into the hotel, the bike made it. That was the thing I was most worried about, is getting my bike there in one piece, because it was, I put an air tag in the bike case. So I saw them load it on the plane, but I'm still not convinced. And I was only comfortable once the plane started taxiing and the air tag was following me on my phone. And I was like, it's on the plane, it's on the plane. And she's like, will you put your phone away? So the bike's with us, it's okay. Bike made it okay. I started panicking. I went for a check swim the day before, and it all kind of went wrong from there, really.
What's a check swim?
I just
check if you can swim?
Yeah, pretty much, in the sea. I hadn't done any sea swimming at all.
Okay.
Which was a big schoolboy error, because it was a completely different ball game from swimming in a swimming pool.
There's waves and everything.
Well, on the day I did my check swim, on the Saturday, it was flat calm, and I still had a panic on. The day of the Ironman, it was proper waves and heavy current, and I honestly thought I was going to die.
Wow.
I thought I was going to drown. And I managed to get round. There's a cut-off time of 1 hour. I got round in 55 minutes. I went to get out the water, went to stand up, physically couldn't stand up. I fell over 4 times before I could get on my feet. And then the rest of it was just hot. It was 28 degrees. So the bike was really good and really fast. And then the run was just a case of getting through it, really. But it was an amazing thing to do. If you'd have asked me on the day whether I'd do another one, the answer would have been a swear word followed by no way. But I am going back to do it again next year.
Wow. Well, you've heard it here first.
There's unfinished business. And what was really cool, one of my followers who lives out in Spain, we were there and we recce'd the bike course together in his car and had a beer afterwards. And that was really, really cool.
Awesome. I mean, it looked great from my end, sitting at home with a beer on the couch. But no, jokes aside, I got up on was it Saturday?
Sunday, yeah.
And I tuned into the app because you could follow, you obviously had a chip on you, so you could follow Pete's sort of plotting around. And you got to the run and I was like, oh, here we go. He's basically done. He's finished. And then the app had like a glitch in it and you just stopped about 4K into the run. And I was just instantly like, he's had a heart attack. He's not coming back. Like, what am I going to do with the podcast on my own? And other things, obviously. But no, but jokes aside, I was really worried. Like, I was messaging T and other people that might have been out there. You know, have you seen him? Is he okay? But it was thankfully just a glitch. Because then suddenly you went from 4K to about 10K in a couple of minutes. So,
yeah. I mean, well, on a serious note, Pat, who's the guy behind the camera, he works with Archie Hamilton, who did a half Ironman last year, and that's exactly what happened to Archie. He got halfway into the run and collapsed and ended up in hospital. So it's not an unknown thing.
Sure.
But the thing that put it into perspective, I did it in 7 hours 45. On the way home in the airport, I met a guy who he had an Ironman wristband on as well.
Wow.
And he's like, "Oh, did you do it?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "How did you get on?" I said, "Well, it was my first one. It was a bit emotional and, and harder than I thought, but I'm pleased I did it in 7 hours 45. How did you get on? He said, "Well, I'd not done a half Ironman before. I'd done 2 full Ironmen." I went, "Oh, wow. Okay. And how did you get on?" He went, "I did it in 4 hours, 5 minutes." He did the whole thing faster than I did the bike. And I'm like, I don't understand how that's possible. The guy who won it did it in like 3.5 hours.
Wow. That's amazing.
So I sheepishly disappeared and tried not to bump into him again.
Yeah. Well, you've got a target for next year then.
Oh, I've got time to take off, but I wasn't fit enough and I need to work harder. But it was amazing.
Wow.
And we raised a lot of money for charity as well. We raised with gift aid over £6,500.
Wow.
For Born Free. So that's super cool. So.
Very impressive.
Yeah.
I might want to butt in there and just say, if you can hear some background sounds, it's because we're at Caffeine Machine, and there's lots of things going on down here, which there is always. It's always alive, especially during the summer months. So there's everything and anything turning up: motorbikes, cars. I don't even know how to describe some of the vehicles that are turning up, but amazing spectacle.
And we're getting distracted because really cool things are coming in. What the hell's that?
Yeah, we can't see it.
There's something revving over by the main building. It sounds awesome.
Yeah.
In fact, I think it might be coming down here. Look.
Oh.
What's that? Oh, hello. Oh, that can't be. Oh no, there's
it's something behind that, and that is coming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, talking about loud engines and fast things, you've had an exciting week last week.
I've just come back from the N24, which is the 24-hour race around the Nurburgring, which has been going for a long time now. I think about 30 years. I'm probably going to be quoted wrong on that. But I've been out there with Audi UK, and it's an epic race. I've been going for years now, apart from 2020 for obvious reasons. And it's just such an amazing event. The racing's incredible. There's so many different classes. GT3 cars down to, there was a Dacia Logan that was basically standard with slick tyres and a cage. I think it tops out at like 80 miles an hour along the Dottinger Herb.
Can you imagine the closing speed between that and like a GT3 car? That would be terrifying.
That was discovered late at night, unfortunately. There was a massive, horrible accident. But thankfully everyone was okay. But yeah, so you get all that sort of closing speed. You normally get a mix of crazy weather there because you're in the Eifel Mountains, which is, anyone that's been out to Nurburgring, you'll know that it's a mix of weather. But we had beautiful sunshine out there for the race, which was fantastic. And it's a race of attrition. There's so many amazing drivers and cars out there, and most of the teams like Audi have got, I think, 8 cars they had this year. BMW had maybe 10.
That runs around the whole Nordschleife.
Yeah, so it combines the F1 circuit or the GP circuit and the Nordschleife together. So I think the fastest times were like very high 7 minutes. But that's in a GT3 car on slicks, not too dissimilar to that Michelin tyre that we got in front of us.
That's unreal. I mean, as a driver, you think, well, it's hard enough to learn the Nordschleife anyway.
Yeah.
That's why they stopped doing Formula One and major races there. But to do that at night time,
it's pretty crazy at night, and it looks faster at night. And it is actually, I think around midnight, it's the quickest time because the air is cool. Track temperature's still a little bit higher than it is at like 3 or 4 in the morning. But it's really epic. And we went into the forest. You can even if you've got a normal ticket, you can wander into the forest anywhere and find a fence to sort of cling onto and watch the cars come.
You were so close.
I was, yeah.
I mean, some of those positions you were in, it was like, wow. I don't think you could get as close to that at pretty much any motor racing other than rallying.
No, it's definitely a health and safety issue, and we had media vests which allowed us to get basically in front of where the marshals were, and the marshals are standing behind a big fortified fence, so that's probably there for a reason. But it's worth it just for a couple of minutes to the sensation of these cars coming past you, literally feet away from you. So yeah, no, that was very, very cool. And I only got back early hours of yesterday. So
And you drove there in the new RS6 Performance.
RS6 Performance, yeah, which is, well, I can't talk about it because there's a driving embargo on it, but
Okay.
it was a really nice colour.
It was a lovely colour. It was red.
It was red, and believe it or not, it's faster than the normal RS6 because it's got more power and more torque. And what else can I say?
Nothing.
That's probably about it, really. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we move from one German manufacturer? That was an in-depth review of the new RS6 Performance by Joe Achilles.
I've got to be careful.
That's why he does BMW content. So let's talk about you and BMW. Can I just quick show of hands, by the way? Who is a BMW fan thanks to this man next to me?
No hands go up. Oh,
look,
okay.
look.
Nice.
All right, and let's go one further. Anybody got a BMW because of this man next to me? There's a few, look.
Nice.
There you go. Take a picture of that, Pat. Send it to the BMW media team immediately.
Yeah. Send it to their marketing team that never paid me a penny for anything.
So you are well known online as a BMW guy. You've owned BMWs since you've been in YouTube.
Yep.
And we've got your lovely M3 Touring behind us. If you haven't had a look at that car, then Joe said anyone can take it for a drive. That they're just asking for the keys. It's fine. It's an automatic, so the gearbox is working just fine. But it's
See, that was a funny joke. Yes,
there you go.
You've been saving that one.
I know.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Someone said on the first podcast there wasn't enough banter. Well, he's now done enough things for me to take the mickey out of him.
Yes, I'm good. I'm glad to.
So talk to me about BMW. Why are you such a fan of the brand? And how did you get to the point where you've kind of owned so many and like them so much?
Finance so many. Mostly.
Oh, sorry.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not going to kid people. So it all started back in the mid 80s when I was a kid. You were probably a teenager by that point, but I was 6, 7 years old in the mid 80s, and my auntie and uncle live in the south of France. And my uncle used to get a company car, which was quite rare in France, or anywhere back in the day. But and his company car was always a 3 Series, and it was a 325i Sport back then, the E30, a beautiful one, probably one of my favourite cars ever. And I was just obsessed with cars back then, and so that just pushed me over the edge to love BMWs. And in fact, from the second, they lived in this house in the Ardèche, which had a 2-kilometre drive. It wasn't like a paved drive. It was a bit like this, actually. So it was like a gravel driveway. And as soon as I was sort of old enough to understand what the wheel did and stuff, I used to be able to sit on my auntie's lap, and we used to go up and down the drive. So I'd do the steering. And then by the time I was about 8 or 9, because I grew quite quickly, they used to throw me the keys to it. So when we'll go down for some holidays, my parents and everyone would be walking or having lunch, a boozy lunch, and I would literally be going up and down the driveway as a 9 or 10-year-old in this 325i Sport automatic. And I used to love it. And so that is where my BMW love kind of grew. I liked the brand anyway back then as a kid, but I think I like pretty much everything as you do when you're younger. But that's where my obsession with BMW started. And then as soon as I was old enough to buy a used BMW, it grew from there. And yeah, I've had many ever since. And I think there's no doubting that cars like the original M135i, that's kind of where my channel started almost 10 years ago. And that's where I guess I went from being on forums like the Baby BMW forum onto making funny little videos online. And then cars like the original M2 in 2016, that again gave me that sort of channel boost and bigger audience, I guess. But yeah, I do love them. I mean, but it's no secret, if I had all the money in the world, I'd have something like a GT3 Touring, because that's my dream. But
yeah,
the reality of getting one of them is...
Yeah, I guess the challenge, for me, there's a challenge, and when we talk about my kind of car journey, we were talking about off camera, the challenge for me at the moment is cars are just getting to the point where they're so expensive, especially new cars, that we get a lot of stick sometimes in reviews where we might refer to a car and say it's only 50 grand. And people say, well, hold on, 50 grand, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That £57,000.
Yeah, you say it's 57, but it's actually worth. You couldn't find one of them for 57.
No, exactly. I know they keep the money, but so when you start looking at cars and the price of them,
yeah,
it is quite scary, really. But the following you have on BMW and the authority that you have. So how much do you nerd out when you get a new model that's come to market? How much of that is reading research, and how much of it is stuff you just know anyway?
I mean, I don't know. I get a lot of stuff wrong.
Well, I wait.
Maybe not. Yeah, wait. So
not on my level, mate.
Maybe not size of cabins.
I'll tell you how to get things wrong if you want to add that to your videos.
It's a combination of everything. I guess if I'm really interested in something like the incoming, well, it's out now, isn't it? The G87 M2. I was really interested in that car, being an M2 owner, and so as soon as there was information available, I was consuming it and learning it. And I was useless at school. Academically, I was just terrible. I wasn't interested in learning and didn't get very good grades as a result. But I realised something at school, that things like maths, physics, stuff that I was interested in, I could learn. So it wasn't maybe that I was useless. My brain works like that. It's like, if there's something I'm interested in, I'll learn about it. And yeah, so when the new M2 came out, I'm super intrigued and interested in it. And when you go and see it for the first time, I saw it in a studio in Munich, and I just wanted to spend an hour with the car before the cameras came on, just having a look at it and trying to understand it. So yeah, it's I guess that's just the passion in me and what I love coming out. But in the same way, if it's a car that I'm not interested in, it's just like, okay, I need to know some facts. Let's go out and drive it and review it. So it depends on what the car is, really.
And I guess with BMW, you're at a point now where you're so well known and have such good contacts within BMW. You get to talk to designers and senior people and understand the design philosophy and have a more in-depth conversation about their cars, their plans, their ethos behind the cars, and you can kind of put that into your videos and content.
Yeah, you do. But as you know, you speak to a lot of these, people that work for the brand. They are always going to give you a bit of a swayed version of maybe what the truth is. So you've always got to be a bit aware of that. But yeah, no, it's great. Actually, on Saturday at the Nurburgring, I was very kindly, considering I was there with Audi, the BMW M lot were there. So Frank Van Mule, who's the top guy at BMW M, and Dirk Hacker, who's the lead engineer there, they both invited me out we did a parade lap. So I sat in with Dirk in this M8 safety car. So it was an ex-MotoGP safety car, decatted complete. Oh, it was an absolute riot. But Dirk gets really, obviously being the chief engineer at BMW M, he's really nitty gritty and asked me loads about what I've said in videos, and like it's just like, so why did you say this? And I was like, you're sitting there going,
that's like your worst school report ever.
It is literally, yeah.
At least he's watching your stuff.
Well, it is a compliment, but at the same time, you're like, I wish you weren't watching my stuff. But they take everything extremely seriously, and still have a massive love for what they do and the brand that is still, BMW M. They're still able to sort of feed their DNA to the customers, which is a great thing. And I just hope it lasts. It's slowly dwindling away, and they're getting less and less control as things change. But the passion is still there, and they're trying, like all manufacturers, really. They're still trying to make the best of what they can with what they're allowed to do, because it's the restrictions and stuff that we don't see. People complain about the new RS3 being too quiet or whatever, but it's because it can't be any louder. BMW, Audi would make it a lot louder if they could, because that's the target audience. You want your RS3 to, at least when the valves are open, you want it to be popping and sounding like, an old Quattro rally car. But the reality is they can't.
No.
So yeah, but anyway, that's me with BMW. How did you start with the Mini love, and did it actually start with Mini? because I have a feeling there's another story.
There is, yeah. I'm just also thinking, I just hope people at Porsche aren't watching my stuff. Yeah, I've always loved, a bit like you, always loved cars, and I used to do the same thing with my dad. I used to sit on his knee and steer along, or when we were going on holiday, he'd let me change gears and stuff. And I've always loved cars. When I first had cars, it was a case of I could basically buy what I could afford. I had a Mark 1 Fiesta as my first car, which was just ace, until I blew it up. But then...
Oh, I've done that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But yeah, so the Mini thing, I got into Mini by accident. But I was actually more of an Audi guy. We had an Audi S4 Avant, and I really wanted, at the time I had an Audi TT S. That was my second Audi TT I had. So we had two Audis in the family, and I was looking at getting an S5 cab.
Okay.
And I remember at the time, and we were joking off camera, I remember at the time I was going to get like a used one, maybe 9-month-old ex-demo, and it was going to cost me 40 grand. And I remember balking at that, thinking that's going to take a load of finance. But I really wanted one. And at the same time, I had two friends. One had an R56 JCW hatch, which was just amazing. A black one, red roof, red stripes. They lived very close to here, actually. And I drove it, and I just thought, this is just the coolest car ever. And then a mate of mine came round, and he had a red JCW Roadster. And I'd never seen one before. I'd seen the coupe on the roads, but I'd never seen a Roadster. And he turned up at the house for dinner, and I just said, what's that? That is cool. And I had a look at it, and it was a soft top. I love my soft tops. And I remember the next weekend, we were my wife and I were sat in bed having a cup of tea on a Saturday morning, talking about cars. And Tracy knew I wanted to get an S5 and wasn't keen because they were very, 40 grand. And I remember, those of you who are married will know how this conversation's going to go. I remember saying something about a Mini Roadster, and she went, "Oh, what's one of those?" And I showed her this picture of a Mini Roadster, and she just went, "That's really cool." And it was for sale at Sunningdale Mini. She went, "Why don't you go and take a look at that today?" And I'm like, well, hold on, that's never happened in the history of the world. She didn't say that about the S5. And I went, oh, okay, I'll go and take a look at the car. So I went along to Mini Sunningdale, and as it happens, they didn't have a Roadster. They had a coupe that I could drive. So I drove the coupe, loved it. And then we went back to the dealership, and they opened up their network portfolio of the cars they had. And they had a black Mini Roadster up north somewhere. I think it was Leeds. And I said, oh, that's really nice. And it was £21,000. And I remember I said, look, I'll take the details. I'll go home and I'll have a chat with my wife. And at that point, Tracy called me to see how I was getting on. And said, how are you getting? I said, oh, fine. I said, they've got a really nice car. It's not quite the spec I want, but there's things that they can do to it. And, I'll bring the details home. It's only 21 grand. And then the magic words came out of her mouth. Well, if you like it, why don't you buy it? Right? And I'm like, this is a test, isn't it? there's no way you're telling me. And anyway, it was half the price of the Audi, and I bought it cash. And that was it. That was me buying the Roadster, and I had the wheels sprayed black. I had spot lamps put on the front of it, and something else as well. Oh, and some stripes put on the side. And that was the Mini Roadster. And that's what started my channel. A bit like you, I started YouTube maybe 6-9 months later. That was the first video that I made was my Mini Roadster. I didn't do anything to it until it was 3 years old. And then as soon as the warranty had run out, I started modifying it with Lowen, and, the rest is history, really. And that just got me the Mini bug. And the cool thing about Minis, and it's very similar to BMW, I'm sure, any people here with a Mini because of me? Oh, look, that's a few. Hey, excellent. See? I was really panicking that there was going to be nobody put their hand up then at all. But the Mini community is an amazing community. There's just such lovely people. You see other Minis on the road. They're all very different. One of my favourite stories, the guy who's black Mini JCW hatch, he's had a couple. He bought one for his wife. He bought a Clubman for his wife. And they were about to do the deal at the dealership. And he said, look, I'm having it. And the dealer went, no, you're not. He said, you're not signing that today. He said, I want you to, he was buying a brand new car. He said, I want you to go home and sit down with your wife and talk about the car and understand or work out how you're going to make it yours. There's all these different options you can do, and you want to make it much more yours. and brave sales guy. And the guy, Andrew, left, went home, went onto the configurator, chose a few more options, probably spent another 1,500 quid, £2,000, went back the next day, ordered the car.
Wow.
And that's bold. But it was, you're buying a Mini, you've got to make it your own. And I love that about Minis. They're all different.
Yeah.
And there's some lovely ones turned up tonight. I'm going to have to give a shout out to the two over there. There's a lovely JCW Clubman over there, very similar to the press car that I had. So I ended up with my Clubman. That's a press car fault or problem. So I went to the launch of the Clubman with our mate Steph, ABTV.
Yep.
We drove to Bruges in it. It was a Rebel Green with a red roof. And then about a month later, I was with the Mini press team, and the guys in the press team said, would you like one of these to run for 3 months as a long-termer? And I'm like, hell yeah, that'd be amazing. And we had one for 3 months. And when it went back, I went out and bought one literally a week later. I had a GP3 on order. I cancelled the GP3 order and bought a Clubman.
That probably was a good move, I think.
Yeah.
GP3's fun, but it's just not good in the UK, I don't think.
Can I admit something here to the Mini? Of all the press cars I've ever had that I've looked forward to driving, the GP3 was the one that I was most disappointed with.
Yeah.
I didn't like it at all. Anybody got GP3 before I start slagging it off? I just didn't get on with it at all. Imran's Evolve made theirs really nice.
Yeah.
But a standard GP3, I didn't like it at all. It was just way too pointy and sharp, and it just felt like it wanted to kill you all the time.
Yeah, it was the torque steer.
Yeah.
Horrendous. I mean, the first time I tried one was Imran's at Landau Circuit, and it was actually dry. The tyres had heat in them.
You rang me on the way home because I'd ordered one by then, and you went, mate, this is an amazing car on track.
It was on that day on a smooth track, had some temperature in the tyres, but then I tried a press car a few months later in cold, wintry conditions, and it was it wanted to kill me. I've never been so scared in a car. Like, for no reason, you drive it at 5/10 and it still wants to kill you.
Yeah.
And it would drag you into the other lane on oncoming traffic down the road like this. It would literally, under acceleration, it would start pulling. Really dangerous. But in the right scenario, still quite fun. But they just didn't get the ingredient. Whereas your Clubman, I mean, I drove your one or the press car.
No, you drove the Clubman.
Yeah, and I absolutely loved it. I think it's a brilliant car. It's just a shame that that's dead.
Thanks to a log.
Yes.
But where I was going is the best Mini. Now, someone's going to be really happy here. I think the best Mini they ever made was one of them parked over there.
The 210?
The Challenge 210.
Oh.
Whose is the Challenge 210? There you go.
Hey.
Best Mini ever made. Mega thing. Absolute mega thing. But yeah.
Wasn't that with the adjustable suspension and stuff on it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's a proper bit of kit.
Yeah.
It's not the most powerful Mini, but it's well sorted.
Yeah.
You speak to anyone who knows.
210 horsepower?
I reckon, yeah.
Yeah.
How did you know that?
I'm fountain of knowledge. So, yeah. He's probably going to go, no, that's just the
It's
name.
probably mapped it to about 5 million. But yeah, no, and sadly, when I've still got the Roadster, I've over modified the Roadster a little bit. I want to pare it back. It's got coilovers on it that are too harsh, and it's got Alcon racing brakes, which are amazing, but the pads are way too hard.
Okay.
So it squeals and makes horrible noises, and it's just too track and not enough road right now. And I think that's the problem sometimes is you modify cars. The Stage 2 on it's great. The Quaife diff, racing clutch, all of that's great.
Yeah.
But I've just gone a bit too far with the suspension and the brakes.
Yeah. I don't know about modifying cars. I've never really done it myself. I've never had any issues or anything.
No warranty issues. No. I mean, what I'm glad I didn't do was put a short shifter in it, because that would have been a nightmare.
Well, actually, there's an update. I don't know how many of you know about my M2.
Hold on a minute. How many people know about Joe blowing up his M2? Everybody knows.
Oh, right. Anyway, I think we're out of time. Right. Thanks for coming, everyone. No, so I've got a bit of an update not on the car. I'm going down to Swift on tomorrow night. Actually, we're going to do a bit of a night shift, pressure test the engine and do a few bits. A lot of lovely people have reached out, hoping to help with the rebuild or whatever it is that needs doing. But I was talking to the guys from Throttle House. I don't know if you guys are familiar with their YouTube channel, massive YouTube channel, but they messaged me randomly yesterday, and they told me something that was really interesting that I hadn't crossed my mind, and it actually hadn't crossed most people's mechanically minded minds either. And this is not me. Can I just say, this is not me. This is not me taking the blame away from me, because on video, I put my hands up. I'm blaming me for now, but they came up with a good point. They asked me how much power and torque the car was running. Now, it was the first time I'd ever run the full power and tune that I'd had, because it's switchable on the wheel. And because I had the bigger tyres and the new Team excuse me, Team Sherman kit in there, it was running 500 horsepower and 700 newton meters of torque, which is way too much. And I'd tried that with the previous wheels, and it was horrible because it was just spinning up and it just felt overpowered. But I thought I'd try it on this new setup. So it was the first time I'd actually run that kind of torque, and I wasn't full throttle in first or second, but by the time I was in third, full throttle, and it was really fast, noticeably quicker than in the CS map, which it had been in previously. Now, what they'd said to me was the engine, the gearbox, is on mounts designed for 500 or 550 newton meters for the CS, right? So that moves around a bit. But when you're running 700 newton meters of torque, you're getting a lot more flex from the torque. So what he'd said was, because it had happened to him on a previous BMW, not an M2, but on a previous one that he tuned, he said that because I was top of fourth under full load, and as I've come off the power and gone to change gear, he said there's that much flex in the gearbox and everything's moving.
No
that when
way.
you come off the load, he said even if you had engaged what you thought was fifth, because of the difference in where the linkage is at that point, you could have very easily put it into fifth and it had gone into third. And what I was trying to say was, without getting the excuse book out, was when it happened, and I don't know if I talked about this in the video, but I still remember the shift because it was an expensive shift. And it's still...
It was an uncontrolled and shift.
It was an uncontrolled
See what I did
shift.
there?
Yeah, no wonder that brand went down the drain. But I remember going into fifth, like it's quite an easy gear change. It wasn't like they're close, but it was like definitely I'm in fifth. It happened, so I've hit the clutch. And at that point, I've then come back, it's neutralized into where third and fourth is, and I've redone the shift again with the clutch in, just going almost like, wait, I was definitely in fifth. So, I don't know, the jury's out. I'm still blaming me very much, but I'm just saying there's a tiny hint of maybe it actually...
Racing driver excuses.
But
I'll
still, I tuned the car, so it's still my fault regardless. And but it just shows you that as soon as these road cars are all great and you can do certain things to them, but when you start pushing them too hard, everything leads to other problems, doesn't it? You start breaking other things. And but anyway, it's a learning curve, and hopefully in a few months' time, the car will be back together and the engine will be better and stronger than ever, because we're going to do some upgrades, fix the crank hub, which is a common fault, which probably is part of what's happened. And hopefully it'll be back on the road, because I miss it a little bit.
I've never been in it, let alone drive it. So.
We talked about it,
Yeah.
as with many things.
Yeah,
but, you live so far away, mate. I mean, seriously. But yeah, so that's the latest with the M2.
So we talked about why we like Mini and BMW. The really interesting thing from a YouTube point of view is we like cars. So although we grew our channels on the back of those two brands, we do other stuff. Whether that's is it getting one for the gram straight?
No, I'm making a video, so carry on, please.
Well off footing now. Look. So the challenge is, if you grow a channel with a particular brand like Mini or BMW, when you do stuff on other cars or other manufacturers, that either sometimes doesn't do that well, or you get kickback because you're not doing enough of the core content that you grew your audience with. I get messages every now and again, when are we going to see more Mini content? And luckily, I'm currently doing a Mini project with Podium Place and the R52 build, which is really cool. But you're always wanting to try and keep all the audiences happy if you can.
Yeah, it is a difficult challenge, isn't it? But then you'll do something, well, like your in fact, we both have done Skoda videos recently, and they've both done really well. So occasionally you will do something that's different to what you think your audience are, and it does really well. It picks up other things. But yeah, there is only so much you can do with brands, isn't there? And I think, let's just see where the future takes us, because, there's going to be less and less, let's say, really exciting vehicles. I think over time, they will get better and better. The new Alpine, I'm going to call it a Renault 5. I mean, firstly, it comes on Michelin, so it must be brilliant. James.
Where is We've got the boss man in from Michelin tonight, so we're just keeping him happy.
Yeah, have we said Michelin enough times in this
I don't know.
podcast?
James,
Michelin?
we said Michelin enough?
We haven't. No. Okay, Michelin. But yeah, things like that. I think I'm looking forward to. I'm sure once people get their head around losing a bit of weight out of EVs and making them a bit more visceral, which is going to be difficult. There are going to be some exciting hatches out there.
I think they need to make hatches and saloons, not SUVs.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of get it because it's market driven, but when you drive, I know something like a Cupra Born, because that's like a hot hatch format EV. They're great things.
Yeah, or the Mini Electric if it did more than 15 miles.
115.
If you're lucky.
How long have we got left? Have we got? Because we've got this amazing audience. I reckon we should start getting some questions.
No, I agree. Let me just check now.
He's going to check his timer.
Yeah, we're at 40 minutes. So
there you go.
Should we take an early break and then?
So, I reckon that's it. So, you can send your questions if you find us on Instagram, the Drive Talk Podcast, and then send a question as a DM. We'll take a quick break now. We can all re-top our glasses, get some refreshments, and we'll start back. How long?
Should we say half an hour? Because we've
half an hour.
So let's say 10 past 8. That's half an hour.
And we'll start back and we'll answer all your questions, and that'll be in the podcast as well.
Yeah.
So let's go and have half an hour break, and we'll see you in half an hour, surprisingly. That was a good sign off, wasn't it? See you soon. That was a nice break.
That was lovely.
Yeah, very nice.
Refreshment. Oh, Patrick, you left your Coke here. This is the moment.
Can we get him on camera? Look.
No,
this
Patrick's
Patrick.
here. Patrick, it's this one over here. You have to come around the back. Come on. There we go. There we go, Patrick. Oh, now it's here. There we go.
Don't spill it on the desk.
There you go. You can't edit that out, can you? Because you're in all 3 camera shots.
Everybody could subscribe or follow at patrick.films. That'd be great. Thank you.
Excellent. On a serious note, this is definitely a 3-man team. Joe and I, here he goes. Joe and I may well. I reckon he's waited to do that, don't you?
Probably, yeah.
It does sound cool though. Yeah. Joe and I may be the guys behind the mics, but Pat is the guy behind the editing suite and the cameras, and he's an integral part of the team.
He's an absolute maestro. Okay, what's the first question then? Off Instagram.
The first question that was off Instagram is a really good one. Is in the world of, because you'll like this because it's about electric cars.
Okay.
And it's quite apt as
electric cars like that one.
Yeah, like that electric car. Yeah. So in the world as we move towards BEVs, bearing in mind you're a BMW M Sport car. So how does BMW M Sport or Audi RS or AMG, how do they differentiate their top of the range flagship sports models when the world is electric? Because in the petrol world they've got V8s or straight 5s or straight 6s. They've got better soundtracks, they've got more power. In the world of electric, well, electrics have a lot of power anyway.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at, let's say, the e-tron GT or the RS e-tron GT, then it is just, it's all about more power. That sounds, what did Clarkson used to say? Power.
Yeah.
It is about that, really, isn't it, at the moment? And that it kind of has been since day dot of EVs in the modern era. It's the power game and the 0 to 60 game. But as we've all discovered, well, as not all of us, because I understand that we're not all fortunate to drive these cars because they are expensive. But as you and I have discovered with most of them, that power and that speed wears off. The excitement of that wears off very quickly. And it's actually, they're so fast. There's that EV again.
I know. These Teslas sound good, don't they? Wow. Do you think that's like a speaker underneath it?
I think so, yeah. But yeah, that sensation wears off quickly, and also we live, at public roads, and in a really fast RS e-tron GT, you are breaking the speed limit in 2.5 seconds or something. So that wears off quickly. I think where it's going to go, well, they're going to have to inject some kind of feel and soul back into these EVs, and I think a bit like we talked about before the break. They are going to find ways to do that, and I think when you drive, my personal favourite is the Taycan. It smells like a Porsche. It looks like a Porsche. This driving position is a Porsche. and when if you close your ears.
Yeah, I know. Don't close your eyes though.
Yeah, don't close your eyes. If you close your ears, you could almost be driving a combustion engine old school Porsche or Panamera or something.
I couldn't.
I mean, it's an amazing piece of kit. But once again, I was talking to someone about this at the Nurburgring. Actually, we were talking about the soul of EVs or the lack of. And I had the Taycan Turbo S recently. I say recently, about 6 months ago. It's probably the last EV I had, which is probably the fastest thing out there, along with maybe the Plaid or whatever. And I only had it for about 4 or 5 days. And if that was a 911 Turbo S or even an RS3 or whatever, when you give a press car back after 5 or 7 days, you do miss it. If you even if you only slightly liked it, you do miss it because it's gone. But I remember not having. It went, and it was a brilliant car, but I didn't miss it at all. There was nothing, no connection there. And I thought that was 150 grand, that thing. It was made by Porsche, but I didn't miss it. Yeah. It was a great car, but I just didn't miss it. And that's that whole soul and living thing of a combustion engine car that I think, but we're going to slowly learn to live without them, and then we're going to miss them maybe less and less, maybe more and more. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see how they do differentiate the high-end RS, M cars, AMGs, how they do that will be an interesting project.
I can't wait to drive an electric Boxster.
That will be good.
If they can get the Porsche Taycan feel in a smaller, lighter weight Boxster-sized car, I think that's going to be amazing for 50 miles.
Yes.
And then you need to go and find a charger.
Yeah.
Just before we go on to the next question, when you talk about giving a press car back, I had an MSRT Ford Ranger for 6 months, okay, and I had to give that back at Christmas, and there hasn't a day gone by since I haven't thought about that car. I bloody love that car, and it was the one I didn't want to give back, and it was a Ford Ranger. Amazing thing.
See, that's it. Yeah, it doesn't need to be.
Know, it was wicked.
Just tickled your fancy.
Wicked. Anyway, next question.
Yeah, next question. Okay, so in no particular order. Jack Henry Payne.
Where's Jack Henry Payne?
There he is.
Hey.
So Jack has asked, Joe. Sorry, Pete.
Oh, fine.
Are you getting the new M2? If so, I assume it won't be the manual. I hadn't read this question.
You can come again. I like you.
Discuss. I'm not planning on getting the new M2. Firstly, I can't afford it with what I've got at the moment. And so one of the cars would need to go.
And no one wants to buy an M2 with a smashed-up manual gearbox, let's face it.
One's currently a show car, and this one's a very useful car. But I think I said on my M2 first drive video that if I hadn't have ordered this and the timing of the touring wasn't sort of how it was, I think I would have been happy to have the M2 instead of that. Not because it's a better car, but because it's 2/3 of the price, and underneath it's essentially the same thing. It's not as practical. This thing's brilliant practicality. But yeah, so long story short, I'm not getting the new M2. I'm hopefully getting a long-term July, August time that I'll have for 3 months, so I can live with it and maybe figure out if I do want to eventually get one. But I think they are a good buy, even at 65 grand. I know that's a lot of money, but everything is expensive at the moment, and what you get for 65k is a lot of car. So good question. And the press car I'm getting, I've requested that it is a manual, so maybe I need to change that. But yeah, great question. And you haven't driven one yet.
I haven't driven one yet. No, I need to get my hands on one. Yeah. I wasn't invited out to the press launches in America.
No, you're not important enough. Right, next question. No. Nigel Ward has said.
Where's Nigel Ward? Is he in the house? There's Nigel Ward in the house.
Thank you, Nigel. This is another very good question.
Is it for you or just?
It says specifically for Joe Achilles. No, it doesn't at all. I assume it's for both of us, this one. Yeah. Do you choose your car with your head or your heart?
Ooh.
No, that can go to you first.
I think there's a bit of both. I think I would. There's always got to be a bit of head in there, otherwise. I can't. I reckon that was a plant of a question.
Show.
Yeah. Don't. You need to think about things from a non-heart perspective. I'll give you a really, really good example. Last Friday I drove an aerial Nomad for the first time, and anybody driven an aerial Nomad? And no, yeah, Joe has. Everyone's seen what an aerial Nomad. It's like an aerial Atom that goes off road. Honestly, the best driver's car I've ever driven, and it was phenomenal. I think it's probably one of the best driver's cars there are. However, that's definitely choose a car with your heart, because it's just not practical in any way at all. But having one in your life would be amazing. But I think you've also the challenge that we've got is, and I'm not very guilty of it, but when we choose a car, there's actually another element that you need to bear in mind, and that's heart, head, channel.
Yep.
And that, what's that car going to do for you on a channel? And for me, I've not quite fallen into that trap. I bought my Porsche because I've always wanted a Porsche, and I hoped that I could take a mini audience along with me on a journey with a different car. The real challenge for me is, would I ever sell my Mini Roadster for something else? And honestly, I think I probably won't, because of the YouTube channel. Because I love my Roadster to bits, but I think it would be quite difficult if I didn't have a Mini at all. Not that it's on the channel that much, but there are plenty of cars out there that I would like to go and buy. I'd love a GI Yaris, for example, but whether or not I'd sell a Mini to buy a GI Yaris, I don't know. So there's that element as well. I don't know about the same for you.
Yeah, no, exactly the same. And actually, when I purchased my M2 off the finance company, must be nearly 2 years ago now. My static M2.
Yeah.
I've got my show car.
How long can we keep taking the mickey out of him? Do we let him off yet, or do we keep going
until it's working again?
Okay.
And then it's got to stop. When I was at that time, I was also looking at a Cayman GT4, 718 Cayman GT4, because finance back then was actually probably half what it is today. And it was quite attractive, and obviously I've always had a massive soft spot for the Cayman, and especially the GT4, so I was very close to getting that. But one of the deciding factors of not getting it, in my head at least, was that my audience might not warm to, although most of us love that car, whether we've driven it or not, we know it's good. But I just was worried that my audience might not take to it. And so, as you said, it was a big part of my thinking. And also the fact that when I got my settlement figure on the M2, it was a no-brainer because it was a lot cheaper.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough.
It is.
Cool. Very good question. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Next question from Aidan. Me.Aidan.
Where is he?
Thank you very much, Aidan. It's just over there.
Oh, yeah.
Another EV question. Do you think EVs will last, or will new fuels be here in time to save us?
Oh, you see, you got me on my favourite subject there.
Yeah, and mine.
Yeah. I think there has to be a better mix than just pure EV. I think pure EV is an easy solution to a problem, but I think synthetic fuels are part of that. And I think they have a part to play. I think the problem with synthetic fuels will be scale and cost. I did a thing recently with some Bentleys racing at members meeting on a synthetic fuel, and it was £6.50 a litre, I think. Which is actually, if you're putting it into a £100,000 supercar or something, that's fine. But if you're putting it into a family wagon, that's quite a lot. But with scale, that price will come down. But the problem is, are there the raw materials to make that much fuel in that scale? So I think synthetic fuels are part of the mix. I still think hydrogen needs to be in there as well, especially for heavy vehicles. JCB are doing some mega stuff with hydrogen at the moment, but that's hydrogen combustion, not hydrogen fuel cells. So a lot of their new big earth movers and stuff will run on hydrogen combustion with an engine that is basically based on their diesel engine with some big modifications. Harry's done some brilliant stuff with JCB on that. So I think there has to be a better mix. But I think, unfortunately, the powers that be, they've kind of put their money behind EV, and that seems to be the way things are going.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I just wish from day one, if it was my decision and if I was trying to make the planet slightly greener, because I think we can't pull wool over everyone's eyes and pretend that we're saving the planet by doing and going in the direction that we're going in, because there's certain aspects of it that are greener, but it's not suddenly green.
No.
And I think we should have been, or they should have been more realistic about how we went about that, and like everything, trialed it in a better way, and actually focus on, I've always said, focus on cities, electrify cities. Like, you go into London now and there's a lot of EVs there, and actually it's a more pleasant experience as a pedestrian or as a driver, because it's quieter. It's there is less ground level pollution in the cities because they're not putting any out on the exhaust pipe. Even if they're getting it from wherever they're getting it from, doesn't matter. The car's not polluting. So, and also going back to conversation we had earlier on about weight. The other thing is, and I've heard that they're about to start taxing in London. The next thing is you're going to get taxed on the weight of your vehicle. I mean, you couldn't make it up, could you? It's like pushing the whole world towards EVs and then charging you on the weight of your car. Now, if that doesn't tell you that the politicians and the money are behind it, then I don't know what does. But I think they could have really focused on electrifying cities and making them a much better place to live in, and then use them as experiments, get the infrastructure going properly, and then grown. But as it stands at the moment, it's just that, I don't know. I can't see how it's going to turn into a completely electrified. No. We're not all going to be in electric cars.
I mean, I'm sure we'll probably do podcasts on this going forward, but for some use cases, electric is just the best solution. A small city EV, if you're just doing short journeys of less than 50 miles a day and you've got a charger at home, it's a no-brainer. I've run an electric car as my long-termer now for the last, nearly 12 months. It's an absolute no-brainer. It's cheaper to run. You wake up in the morning, you've got a full battery. It's brilliant. Where it falls down is when you need to go on a longer journey or, go outside that range envelope of the car. And also where it falls down for most people is they're just too expensive.
Yeah.
I still don't understand where, the average family that's maybe looking to spend
another EV.
I know, it sounds great, doesn't it? When an average family on an average wage is probably looking to spend £5,000 to £10,000 on a family car.
Yeah.
And the cheapest EV you can buy off the shelf is probably 25 grand at an MG.
Yeah.
Even on finance, that doesn't add up. And most EVs are at the kind of 40 to 60,000 pound mark. For most people, that's just too much money.
Yeah.
I know you can buy them used and stuff like that. So anyway, a really interesting point.
And I think it's just going to be a time thing, isn't it? And see what happens. I think the next few years are going to be key to see what happens.
There seems to be a bit of movement, and I think more investment in other fuels like hydrogen certainly for plant and heavy goods vehicles. I think that's a no-brainer. And then synthetic fuels. Porsche are doing a lot of stuff with synthetic fuels around classic cars.
Yep.
We'll have combustion engine cars on the road in 30 years' time.
Yep.
I've no doubt. What they'll be running on, whether that's synthetic fuel or we'll still be able to buy petrol, we'll see. But it needs to be a mix.
It does. So great question. Really good question so far. Thank you very much.
Did we sound like we know what we're talking about? I don't know.
Yeah. They're not here for that. No, we never know what we're talking about. Okay, so next question is from MJ Tiff Plumbing. Yep, wearing the brilliant Calvin's Car Diaries NAFCO jumper. Those of you that are old enough to remember NAFCO. Another great question. When doing a car review and there is an embargo on it, how in depth is your contract NDA? Can you literally say nothing? For example, the new M2. When did you when you did the first drives, etc.? Very good question.
It's a really good question because I'm sure we've both been at events. I was at an event that had an embargo, and the morning of the event, there was stuff online, social media, photographs and stuff from the previous day's shoot.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, how did that work? The simple thing is, I've never had to sign an NDA, but the general rule is there's an embargo, and if you break the embargo, that's probably the last thing you'll ever do with that brand. And that's normally good enough for me. We worked so hard, 5 years or more of putting the effort in to get to a position where we work with brands, and it's a two-way trust. And I think if you did breach an embargo, then that's probably the last time you'll do any work for that brand. And I would probably argue at our level, we're not quite at the level where we get the really super, well, actually you do in BMW case, super access first. At that level, if you put something out that could be damaging or damaging to their PR campaign, you might face legal action, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, well, with some of the stuff I've done with BM, like the studio stuff, or that really early M2 drive that I did, the pre-production one out in Austria, which seemed like a long time ago now. Can't remember, beginning of last year maybe, but we had to sign a proper NDA. It had to be witnessed, and that was so private so we got there, we got to the track, all the M2s were locked away in garages that we weren't allowed to go and look at until we'd signed all the paperwork. And even then we weren't allowed to film or do anything with the car until we were told that we could. But what made that particular trip really difficult, actually, as someone who was there filming, we knew we were going to have the cars for about 15 minutes on a circuit that we didn't know. I was following Tim, who is pretty handy, believe it or not, on circuit. He does a lot of circuit work now, and he knew that circuit as well. Racing car excuses. But we didn't know anything about the M2, nothing. We weren't sent anything, and we were put in a room literally 5 minutes before we were put in the car with the cameras on, with a load of experts who gave us a spec sheet, which we were allowed to look at, but then we had to give it back, and we weren't allowed our phones in there, so we couldn't write anything down. So can you imagine? You're literally like, right, it's like one of those TV shows where you got to remember what's missing or something. It was like, there's a sheet, take down these, okay, we need the sheets back, there's your car, go out on a circuit you don't know, and try and say something to camera.
I bet Tim just went,
oh yeah, Tim was literally,
it's a memory.
Photo memory. And, but yeah, and that was the most extreme case I've ever had. But as you say, yeah, with the, and more recently, the RS6 performance I've just had, that went back a few hours ago, actually, there was a driving embargo on that car. So that means that you're allowed to take pictures of it. You're allowed to talk about how it looks. You're allowed to I've done a first look video on that car, but we're not allowed to talk about how it drives, which is, yeah, I guess how it sounds. So
yeah,
I hope that makes sense. Next question from Will Hall.
There's
Hey, Will.
over there.
Well, this is another interesting question. They're very good questions. I think we're going to be fisticuffing.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. Mini versus BMW. No, it's not that. Petrolhead tours or podium tours. Wanting to do one. Are they clicky? As in clicky? Are they?
Yeah, as in the people on them.
Okay.
Yes,
yeah. Thanks for explaining that, Fed. Yeah. And are they good for the missus to come along? Very good question. There's a lot of petrolhead tour people here.
I've never been on a Petrolhead tours. I've been on a.
I've never been on a podium tour.
On an SEC private members tour and a GT tours. So I get a couple of things. We could maybe just talk some generic car tour stuff. I think is probably useful. The car tours I've been on. Let's do the "Would your missus enjoy it" thing first.
Wait, what are we talking about here? Oh, the car tours. Sorry.
Yeah. Easy, Tiger. Easy. Most the drive tours I've been on, especially the ones abroad, are normally quite high-paced driving and normally quite long hours driving. So if your other half, because if your other half likes being a passenger in a car being driven vigorously, then they'll probably enjoy it. If they don't, take them on it and have a divorce at the end of it, probably. I wouldn't recommend it.
Or maybe halfway through.
So my other half, there's no way she'd come on a drive tour, even though she loves driving in cars, because one, we spend 5 or 6 hours in a car. That's her idea of hell. But also it's quite fast-paced. Having said that, I know some friends that have literally just finished a tour today in Santander. They've been in the Pyrenees. I was with them on tour last year. An amazing tour, and they stay in really nice hotels. And what they did this year, because it was for someone's birthday, they all took their wives with them, and they had 2 of the hotels they stayed in for 2 nights. And on the middle day between those 2 nights, the guys went off, or the girls went off and drove, and their partner stayed behind and had a spa and chilled out by the hotel, and so they made it a bit more kind of inclusive for everybody. But yeah, I don't know, if you like driving fast, be a passenger. Wicked.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, it's the same with the Petrolped tours. Like Lou came on one in 2021 actually, with who was on that one here? Someone, I'm sure. But anyway, that's an S55. That is an S55 that works. Wow, listen to it. Wow. Oh, that brings back memories.
He's going to put it in gear in a minute.
Yeah, there we go.
Is that in gear?
Yeah,
Is that gear now?
Doesn't sound like 10,000 RPM though.
No.
He hasn't got that on his car, I don't think. No. Anyway.
He's 0 to 10
should have a manual.
Yeah.
So yeah, Lou came on one in 2021 with me, but I only suggested that because Lou is the most relaxed and chilled passenger I've ever experienced. To the point that actually, I think when I first met Lou, we went on a track day. I was on a track day, and I invited her down. I was like, I'll take her up some hot laps. Like I think I'm quite reasonable on track. Maybe I'll get some giggles or chuckles. She's out there. She was just like, oh yeah, that was fun. Anyway, we'd only been dating about 3 or 4 months, and my other half works for Audi and has done for many, many years. And then she revealed to me that she'd been around Le Mans with Tom Christensen for a few hot laps, and she knows Tom really well. And I was like, So yeah, literally, I was just like, oh yeah, I wasn't pushing. Obviously, I could have gone a lot faster. Yeah. But anyway, that's the sort of that's what Lou is like. So Lou was. Yeah, she was very chilled, but I would not want... I personally would hate to be a passenger on something like a Petrolped Tours, but mostly because I just want to be driving all the time. Yeah. But as you say, there's flexible... They do a lot of tours these days where, like you said with your friends, that you have like 3 manic days and then a couple of days at a hotel where you have optional drive days. So you can just chill there. You can both chill there, or you can continue and do the day trips that they do out of that hotel. And I think that's a real, that's always nice, because you get mentally exhausted after 3 or 4 days at that pace for 8 hours a day. You're mentally drained.
I think for me, the last thing about if you're trying to look for a drive tour to go on, and I'm not going to name which one you should go on, but the two critical things for me are: has the tour leader recce'd the route? So a really good drive tour, and I know Pete does this on Petrolhead tours, and Alan does this on GT tours, and Podium tours have done it too. You've got to recce the route, so they need to have driven the route. You normally either get a route on Google Maps or maybe on a Garmin in the car, and then whoever's leading the tour, how good are they at calling the road? Because the best tours I've been on are the ones where the person in the lead car, one is a really handy driver, doesn't drive like an idiot, and calls the road really well, because that gives you the confidence then to drive. And the joy of driving on a drive tour is if you're 2 or 3 cars back and you've got someone on a radio calling the road's clear, whilst you never take it as gospel that the road's clear, it just opens up a level of confidence, and you can drive at a level you could never do if you're on your own.
Yeah, calling pedestrians or cyclists or motorbikes or all those hazards.
And then it's probably not till you get on the tour that you know this, but I always like tours that when you get to a built-up area, back off and drive through a town at the speed limit.
Yeah.
I cannot stand tours that hank through a town at, twice the speed limit. So maybe that's just because I'm an old, boring, advanced driver, but drive fast in the mountains when it's safe, back off, because there's little kiddies running around and
of
stuff.
Course.
Like that.
That's the first thing that someone like Pete would do in a briefing every morning is to, do what you want when you're out of towns, but in villages, built-up areas.
And are they cliquey? They can be, but I've never come across that.
No.
So far.
No, not at all. So great question.
Great question.
Next one from Mika. Now, I've seen these here, but I don't...
be brown, I can be blue, I can be violet sky. Sorry, not with that Mika.
He's not here, so he missed that. I can't see him anywhere.
Right, okay.
But this is a question to you, actually. Joe mentioned the GT3 Touring as being his dream car. What is Petrolped's dream car?
Ooh, a McLaren 600 LT Spider.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I think we talked about that.
I just love a McLaren 600 LT Spider. Yeah. I'd love a Cayman GT4 RS or a GT3, but 600 LT Spider.
Okay. Nice. I'll bear that in mind.
Or an aerial nomad, but
Yeah.
that's not particularly practical.
But when this podcast starts doing really well,
Yeah.
then
I'll get a little die-cast model one.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
A question from Paul Marsh, who is here somewhere. There he is. So Paul did ask me this earlier on off camera, actually, but he has said, Joe, why have you not done a video on the X3 M40D LCI? There's no content out there, and there's one sat right behind me, which is his lovely Brooklyn Grey, right? Yeah, it's just sort of literally 6 o'clock.
Come on, then. I've got some GoPros in my bag.
Yeah, so let's go.
Yeah, go on, do it.
Yeah, I'll be back in 10 minutes. That's a good question, and I have been asked it a lot by a lot of people.
Do you know what I think that question really meant is, Joe, would you like to review my?
Yeah, well, that's kind of where I'm going to be taking the channel moving forward. So yeah, maybe I'll hit you up on that, Paul. You'll regret it. You'll be like, is it not a press?
Is it a manual or an
No,
automatic?
auto only.
No,
Auto only, thankfully. Yeah. Oh, wow, look how beautiful the light is now. Really nice. Once again, a big shout out to Caffeine and Machine for hosting us down here tonight.
I'm going to try and do while we're doing this. Very unprofessional. I'm going to try and get a.
Do you know how to use one of these?
Shut up, you.
Come here. Hey.
My arms aren't long enough.
Sorry, for those that are listening and can't see what Pete's doing, he's
doing
taking
a
a
selfie.
selfie of us.
Yeah.
Right. That's from Emmy asking for a photo. I'll just check if you can just kind of like entertain the crowd.
Oh,
just
right.
double check
Yeah.
there's new recent ones in here.
Any impressions? Do you want me to do an impression?
Here we go. Andrew Hurst. Andrew is there. Yes. Andrew's question: would you ever own an EV M3 or stick with a petrol one? Well, it's another EV question, which makes sense because I think every petrol head at the moment is obviously looking into the future and wondering what's going to happen. I mean, personally, if there's still a petrol one available, I'm going to have the petrol one. I am excited about trying the incoming new, whatever they call it. I saw one at the Nurburgring actually, but it was in camo, the fully electric M3 that's, I'm assuming, the next generation. But yeah, for me, petrol. So I tried to
say electric, then you're like,
I tried to hold a burp in and it just doesn't work, does it?
Joe.
Imagine these were vodka and cokes. They're just cokes.
No, I know.
But anyways, yeah, great question.
Take them anyway.
That's my take on it. And for you?
Yes, but I'd want a petrol car in the family as well.
Yeah.
It's maybe a broader answer to a question. I run an EV as a long-term at the moment, and I enjoy using that car for certain things, but I don't think I'm brave enough to only have an electric car.
Yeah.
I'd still want a petrol or a plug-in hybrid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I think we'll wrap this up with one last question.
Here we go.
It's from Tiff the plumber again.
Look, we got multiple.
Yeah, thank you. He's actually asked 3, but I'm gonna
If anybody needs any plumbing work done, Tiff's amazing.
Yeah, he's incredible, honestly. So it's a classic question, and he has actually said it's a classic podcast question.
Okay.
So what's it going to be, Pet?
5-car garage.
Oh, very close. Ultimate 2-car garage.
Oh,
What would you have? While you're thinking, I've already got mine. I'd have an M3 Touring and a manual M2 competition that works.
and then you've got your ultimate M2. So here we go. So this might end up being reality. You never know. I would have my Boxster. I'd probably have a Spider actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah, and either. No, I'd have a Defender.
A
new Defender. Yeah.
Yeah.
Portaloo. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Don't you think? I mean, is it just me?
There's people here that work for JLR. Before you say what you're about to say.
No, but JLR would never give me press cars anyway, so I don't care. But I think they're not designers, are they?
Kind of. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I'm really sorry about this, whoever you are. But I think the new Defender looks like a Portaloo.
They're just sat on that table there. They play modelers for JLR. They literally make the prototype cars. They probably made a clay model of a Defender.
Yeah, but I haven't got any. I haven't got any taste. Have I? I own a BMW M3 with the bucktooth beaver mouth face on it. But I just think it looks like a high-end Portaloo on wheels, or maybe like see that wheelie bin up there, a bit. Anyway.
Wow. Okay. Well, I was hoping to break into the JLR media team. And
Well, you are going to, because you're a big ambassador for it. You like it,
like
and you own Range Rover.
I have, but yeah.
I'm like,
I've had a Range Rover and a Defender. And
yeah. I can't talk honestly. I've got no style.
I do love a Defender
about design.
Yeah. But that, if you ask me that 2-car garage question tomorrow, it would change. Yeah, it's constantly changing. And or an RS3 Sportback.
Yeah, they're awesome cars.
Yeah.
And I was joking about my two. It probably would be an M3 Touring,
it'd be a GT3.
A GT3. An M3 Touring and a GT3 Touring. Yes.
On that bombshell.
Which car are you taking out? The Touring.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're going to wrap up there, but from both of us and from Pat, I just want to thank everybody for turning up tonight. It's been amazing. This has been very much a live pilot of the whole live podcast thing. When we started this project, we started talking about it a long time ago, but when we recorded our first one, it was nervous enough, just me and him in the room with Pat doing the recording. Having you lot today has been amazing. Amazing questions. I hope you enjoyed it. Please come up and give us feedback if there's anything you think that we could improve. The one thing we will do on future live ones, and the plan is to have a roving mic and a roving camera to follow around, but we just didn't manage to get the technology sorted in the short period of time that we knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
But we've really enjoyed it. I hope you have.
Yeah, and thanks for the weather as well.
Yeah.
I mean, thanks again to Caffeine Machine for hosting us. Thanks again to our headline sponsor, Michelin, for being awesome. And we didn't even talk about that amazing time much.
I know, but you get to take that home.
I know. I'm going to cuddle it tonight. No, I'm not. It smells like all good tyres do. So, yeah. How's that on your car? Is it bulging?
So
did you have a tyre failure?
There's a tyre bulge on the front right-hand corner of that press car, but it's on, so that's probably...
Yeah. Oh, mate. Yeah. Anyway, on that literal bombshell, thanks a lot for coming down. And, I've been Joe.
I've been Pete. He's been Pat. And you've been awesome.
Easy now.
Peace out.